In October of 2008, we interviewed exercise physiologist Charles Blount. Charles is a successful trainer in the Los Angeles area working with both celebrities and royalty. He specializes in helping those with disabilities to regain their strength and functionality. In 2004, Stanley Dashew hired Charles to help him regain his balance and mobility, and as the result of their partnership, the Dashaway was born. We talked to Charles and asked him how he met Mr. Dashew and how the challenges of working with him gave rise to the Dashaway.
Well, my name is Charles Blount. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I've worked in Los Angeles working with clientele with special needs for several years. And Mr. Dashew found me. After I made it through the interview process, we began working, and I began to understand Mr. D's condition very well. In fact, I probably knew his condition as well as anyone. The first thing I noticed is that he was actually stooped over. And it wasn't just a stooping forward, it was actually a stooping sideways, which was an indicator typically of some kind of what's called an antalgic lean, where they're leaning away from pain. But in his case, it was caused by degenerative scoliosis, which created curvature in his spine as the discs were collapsing and beginning to fuse together. So that's why he appeared the way he did. When we initially started working, my goal was, better yet, his goal was that he wanted to be upright when he walked. He didn't want to be stooped over. He wanted to be stronger. He wanted to regain his flexibility and mobility and keep his mobility. So this is what we focused on, and this was our primary goal when we worked together. Mr. Dashew and I went through a couple of episodes where he would experience back pain. It was really just a matter of time and the right condition for him to go through another one of these bouts of pain or acute phases of pain. This time, I knew it was different. I knew that it was going to be bad. He took some time off from me, and we didn't see each other for a couple of weeks, and I would come and check on him, and I knew that we had to start doing something or it was going to get, it was really going to be bad. After about 3 or 4 weeks of him really not being able to do anything physical, I got very concerned about him, and I remember him as he was in the bed on up to 8 Vicodin per day, and he was slowly drifting away. He was losing consciousness, and his muscles had atrophied to the point where basically you couldn't see any muscle tone in his legs, and there's no way that his body was going to be able to support that skeletal structure of his spine with no muscle, basically. So we had to get him up, and we had to get him moving around, or he was going to die. At that point, he was completely bedridden. He couldn't walk. He couldn't get upright. If we did move him, we'd move him in a wheelchair. The pain was so acute and so painful that if you moved him in the wrong way, even in bed, he would scream in pain. The first thing that we came up with, and I drew it up, was I came up with a decompression chair where we put a harness over his shoulders and actually decompressed or opened up his spine to relieve some of the pressure on the nerve root. And the trick with Mr. Dashew is we couldn't do any kind of clinical traction with him. It could be dangerous and hurt him, but we needed to give him some form of traction or pain relief where he could control it on his own. And I know there are a lot of patients out there like that, where they need to be in control of how much they're unweighing a painful area of their body, whether it's their low back or their hips or their knees. The next concept beyond the decompression chair was what became the Dashaway, which was an upright device so that he could unweigh himself, put his weight into his elbows and forearms, and take the pressure off his spine as he's moving around. It's very similar to a vertical knee raise in a gym where someone hangs their legs and then pulls their knees up towards their chest. I used to use this clinically to unweigh a person's spine and train the musculature that supported their spine all at the same time when I worked in back and neck pain. I knew that if we had this device and we set it at just the right height, that he could walk around while he's unweighing, the same way someone would hang their legs in this device and unweigh their low back. It's exactly the same thing. So if we get the height exactly right, it would function the same way. So we got everyone together that worked with Mr. Dashew, when we began to look online to try to find something like this that we could use. There was nothing in existence, so we started looking for parts and components from other industries that we could use and put together to create this thing. It was basically a race to save Mr. Dashaway's life. We got the parts together. I got various parts from different types of devices, like existing mobility aids to bicycle parts. I worked with some bicycle engineers to retrofit these pieces to the device. When we brought the device in and we set it down in front of Mr. Dashaway, I put it in front of one of his previous inventions that he'd had. And I remember he sat up in the bed and he said, "That's it." He said, "My life's come full circle." And he was so excited about having created people moving machines in the past, and that's what he's doing now, then at 88 years old. So from there, it was all a focus on improving the life and health of Stanley Dashaway. So first thing we did is we got him upright in the device and walking around, and it immediately helped. It was the only way we could get him up. It was kind of like having a person to support under each arm as he walked. We started walking around and he started getting better, and you'd see some muscle tone coming back in this guy's body. The pain started to go away, which was the most miraculous part. And I knew that if we got pressure off of his spine, the swelling in the nerve could go down, regardless of all the degeneration in his spine. Many people out there have degeneration in their spine, but just because they have degeneration, it doesn't mean they're going to have pain. If you create more musculature around the area or work with it to the point where the nerve inflammation goes down, it's very likely that you're going to get out of pain and be able to move around and have a normal life. And that's what we began to experience with Stanley. A point, I said, you know what, it's time we start working out again and working with resistance tubing and bands and dumbbells and all these things again. And I'm like, God, how are we going to do this? I really don't want him sitting down because that puts more pressure on his spine. And then it was really obvious. The Dashaway was the ultimate way for me to keep him upright and work out with him and retrain him. So we began to use the Dashaway as a functional training tool, and it emerged as this amazing functional training device. The Dashaway really began to form around Stanley's will to keep going. At that point, it was not called the Dashaway. I think I called it something ridiculous, like the Up and Atom, I think is what it was. So Mr. Dashaway had this device, and he went to one of his physicians, and the physician moved it out into the hallway as he worked with Mr. Dashaway. And then as the meeting and doctor's visit ended, Mr. Dashaway got up to go get the Dashaway in the hall. Well, he fell and broke his hip in the doctor's office. First thing I heard is that he fell and broke his hip in the doctor's office, and they had moved him to UCLA where he was in intensive care. And you know, this just didn't sound good. You really don't want an 88-year-old to fall and break their hip, especially if they have to have surgery, because they've got to put them under. They got to give them anesthesia, and they have to work on them. And some people can't live through that at that age. So, as Mr. Dashaway prepared for surgery, the doctors warned us that he might not make it through the surgery. So he had the surgery, and the next day he called me on his cell phone from the hospital after having this surgery that was life-threatening, and said, "We've got to do this. We've got to make this device. I feel very strongly that I want to do this." And I was speechless. I couldn't even imagine how this guy had gone through all this, and he was beginning to focus on this one thing that he knew was going to help him come out of this, both physically and mentally, emotionally, because it gave him something to really focus on and do. And the first time they ever let me in to go visit him, which he couldn't take a lot of visitors because he was in critical care, I walk in and I see the prototype with this name Dashaway written across the front of it. And I thought, this is the perfect name for this device. Here's this man with all this history named Dashaway, and some of his other products have carried his name before. This is the ultimate name for this product. So they began working with him in physical therapy, and it was kind of funny because he would walk down the hallway in the Dashaway to go to a room where they would put him on parallel bars and have him walk some more. Well, he was getting more therapy walking back and forth from his room to PT than he was in PT.